Welcome. Today I want to improve the command line interface of my compiler. Currently, as you can see, it does like the most naive thing you could do. I simply grab the arguments, so argc and argv. I iterate all of the arguments, and then I check if it's an option by checking if the first character is a slash or a dash, or possibly dash dash. And then if it's not an option, I treat it as a C file, which possibly has some wildcards in it. So I have some wildcard handling here. And if it is an option, then I have a lot of string matches here that check if it's like no standard lib, or if it's standard lib, no intrinsics, no PDB, and whatever. And there's also a help option, which just displays some of the options that exist. But as you can see, there's not even close to every option in there. Like, no intrinsics is in there, but like base, for example, is not in here. And so, yeah, this way, I think, while it's very simple, it has some downsides to it to just do it manually every time. Namely, you don't ever keep it up to date. At least I don't. And while I'm the only one using this compiler, that's probably fine. But I hope to change that. And so let's try to get a good command line interface going. So I looked at a couple of examples on how one can implement a good command line interface. And there are sort of two approaches which I could identify. One approach is to have an API where I can say, I want this option and it's of this type. And then the other, which is the thing I want to do, is to generate my command line interface code via some external program, so do some meta programming. And the meta programming is going to work off of a certain file that I've already written, namely this CLI file, I call it. And so here I have the hlc.cli file. And we can see I have some categories defined, for example, common. And later on, I think there's hidden for now. And those are the only two categories. And then I start with some option, which has a slash. There are some different spellings with an or. And then there's a short help for the option and then a longer help for the option. And so the first step into taking this and then generating some code for it is, well, to take this and pass it. So let's do that. So I start out sort of by stealing some code from this test runner, which already has a bunch of code for just like loading files and stuff like that, and all the usual stuff that you have to make C really workable. And then let's load the file and try to, first of all, find the categories. So maybe I'm going to skip that for now, and then I'm going to break it up into three parts, I think, which the first one is this part up to the dash. The second part is the short description. And then the third part is the long description. So for the first step, I managed to make it print all the lines. So we're now in FastCLI. Simply I load the file up with a utility from the test runner. Then I iterate until the file is empty. So I load the file up as a string. Then I iterate until it's empty. I eat one line at a time. So we now have lines. And then I simply print it for now. And yeah, so the next step is to get these three things out. So if I have the first line, I wait until this dash to then get the short description. And then I take all the lines until I find another slash for the long description. We get the first line that starts with a slash. We take that one to be the option string by eating everything until the delimiter. Then after that, we eat some white space and get the short description, which should just be the rest of the line. And then the long description, we delete empty lines until the long description, and then we just eat all lines until we find another slash at the start of a line. And we print all of those. So let's see if that compiles after I fix this data. B32. Okay, that compiled. So let's see what it prints. Null for the long description. Let's try that again. Nothing changed because I didn't compile. Option string / report warnings in system include short description, self-explanatory, long description / test equivalent to no pre-main, no intrinsic, no standard lib entry main. The / test seems wrong. There seems to be the next option. But that might be a special case for this one because it doesn't have a description. Yeah, we can see here, I don't give a description. I just give report warnings and system includes, self-explanatory, and then no long description. So let's support that. And I appear to have forgotten to fix up the long description.size. After we skipped all the lines that depend on the description, we want to set the size to be where the next option starts. So long description dot data and line.data. All right, and that looks better. We can see now, well, this is all part of the long description of something, of the warning stuff, but we have, for example, an option string /obj or /c. We have a short description, produce an object file instead of an executable, and a long description using the /obj option allows you to compile in a more classic C compiler fashion, example, whatever. So we now have separated the file into its parts, have all of these different options, and then a short description and a long description. The short description and long description we don't have to do any more parsing for, because we know what they are now. These just come into the help dialogues later on. But the option string, there's still some stuff to do. For these options, we have to support both multiple different ways to write it, so essentially aliases. Then we also have to support arguments and pass which kind of arguments they have. And for that, there are sort of three different ones, I think. There are string arguments, like for example this one, out path. There are enum arguments, which let you choose one of a couple ones. So for example, for the subsystem option, there's console, window, and EFI application. And there's integers, for example, there should somewhere be the base option. Yeah. Here's a use64, and all of these options should come both in an option where they have angle brackets, which means they are necessary, and also optional ones, like for example for the help string. So let's first of all, in the C file, remark all of these different ways to write it. So the first thing I'm going to do is pass the options, so the aliases. So we want to find a list of these separated by pipes, I guess is the symbol. And then see from there. And so this should print all of the different aliases after I compile. Now we need to strip some white space, as we can see. And then I also want to strip the beginning slash. So now hopefully they all should have their white space removed and also the slash removed. If I haven't added it again, I did add it again. So they should have a slash and then the option for all of the different aliases. error after slash option slash question mark slash question mark. So that's wrong. There's a lot of stuff wrong here. So we have a negative size going on. Doesn't seem great. Where does that come from? From here. Bunch of 0x0s, but I think that's just our size printing. And otherwise, it seemed to have worked, the parsing. Let's get rid of this, run it again, see the front. We have option string slash help, option slash help, option slash h, option slash question mark, and then the short descriptions and the long description. So that works beautifully now. Now for each one of these, we have to pass the arguments. Okay, for the parsing, we first read until one of the two different things that could give us an argument. So either an angle bracket or a square bracket. Then once we found that, we know also what the ending terminator should be. So it should be the equivalent symbol, either a close bracket or an angle bracket. And then we eat until that character. And if we can't find that, then there was some error in there, so we report that. Otherwise, we print the option name and the argument name. So let's see if that builds. It does. And see what it does. You can see here we have the option string, then the option name is help. The argument is square bracket option. Either I want the square brackets on here, but I don't think I want that. I want a Boolean which tells me if it's optional or not. So let's fix that. Okay, and that looks beautifully now. We get the arguments, we get if it's optional, and we get the option name. And so each argument currently only has one option. So I'm not sure if I'm going to enforce that forever, but for now I think that is fine. So we can now have like a overarching option thing which has some aliases and then arguments. But we do need to check somewhat that the arguments all match. So for each of the aliases, the arguments match. And that's actually going to fail in one case, but we will see. Also, we have to pass the type. So let's do that one first. Let's pass the option type. Okay, this should now print some types for us. Not that it really matters, but you can now see, sure. This is of option type 2, which is option. So that's correct. So now we have to start to make some sort of structure, because currently everything is only on the stack, but well, we need some sort of structure. So let's start with that. Actually, I think I'm gonna not start with that, but remember the first one, and once we already have one, I can check the argument types and stuff like that. So then I only ever have to remember one. Now I collect all the arguments into an option aliases string list, so a singly linked list, and then I keep track of the first option argument name, I keep track of if it's optional or not, and what the type is. And simply when I already have an alias, then I say, well, the is optional has to match and the type has to match, otherwise it's an error. And then I allocate one of these string list nodes for the new option name. And in the end, I print them all by just iterating the list. Now let's see what that gives us. First of all, it doesn't compile. But now that it does, let's see what it gives us. Argument of alias he mismatches initial argument of option help space. So let's see what that's all about. Why does it have a space? Did I get rid of the string eats white spaces? String strip white spaces option. Oh, but now there are white spaces in the middle, right? After I eat the parentheses. So here I get rid of the white spaces. And now what's the mismatch? The mismatch is that I forgot to set these options. Okay, let's do that. Okay, and here we actually have something that I expected. So it is an error. Argument of alias W mismatches an initial argument of option W. So here the idea of /W, so enabling warnings, is that it allows both an enum and an integer. So I'm not sure here how to handle this for now, because in the end I want to allow this. But for now, maybe it's easier to just make progress by just allowing enums. So let's just allow enums for now. Okay, and then here I also have the interesting thing. Actually, if there is no long description, in this case, I wanted it to be that the long description of the next one also applies to this option. I'm also going to ignore that for now. But let's write some notes. Okay, and with these changes in place, it now can pass the whole file. Which means we now have passed the arguments, we know the arguments types. And so the last thing is to also collect all of the different options into some structure. So far, so good. And I guess we can now get to the code generation. So let's try to start that. Kind of have to think about how to do this properly. So we want to, first of all, generate the most easy code we can do. So just some ifs and then string matches over all of the different aliases. Then require an argument if there is an argument, and maybe make it optional. And yeah, for now I assume that the argument is the next member in argv. But how to do that with optional ones? I guess I check if it begins with a slash or not. I guess I could do that. Anyway, and then I am for now going to handle enum, option, and string all the same, just being string. So let's start with that. Actually, one thing kind of forgot. Some of these options have to allow multiple things, I'm pretty sure. Like not just you set one, you cannot only set one option, but you have to be able to set multiple. And they don't cancel out. So it should be like a string list in some cases. I'm not sure if I have that though. Like for warnings, but warnings will work differently than anything else, and I'm pretty sure I can hack that one up. And for now I might not have, something like additional include files. Do I even have that option here somewhere? I don't think I'd put it anywhere here. But yeah, if you specify an additional include path, you also should be able to include another additional include path. So there's a difference between like string list arguments and string arguments, where if you set it another time, it just overwrites the first time. I will think about that. But for now, we have flags, which we care about, and we have things that are like this, which have an option. Okay, I stole together some code from my actual argument passing and wrote something that maybe works. So I first of all check all of the different aliases. Then if there is an option, I make sure that the option is actually there. I get the string for it in the same way I do on the actual parsing code. Then if the option type is use64, I pass that to a use64. And in the end, I assign some global to either the number or the argument string. So some problems I already realized this should be argument string. No, wait, there should be argument. That was correct. But the other thing is, what happens if there's no option? And I should just set a flag.
Okay, now there's a flag.
And I could also generate the array or the structure, I suppose. So let's maybe call this CLI options, let's say. So it doesn't need to be global. I generate all of the options by getting a type for it. So either int for flags, use64 for use64, or string for everything else currently. And so I just print in the end, in the beginning, struct CLI options, and then all of the types, all of the argument names, or the option names, and in the end I enter structure. And let's see if that compiles. It does not. That printed something, but it doesn't look particularly good. What are all of these ifs that have nothing in them? And what is this kind of crap? We will have to see. Okay, I only set the options in the case where there was an argument, so half of them were empty, so that was not good. But now I should set them unconditionally, even for flags, and that should hopefully work. Argument alias of help mismatches an initial argument of option help. Oh, because now this option aliases is already set. Okay, and with this we have some better looking code. Not good looking code, but better looking code. There are a lot of problems with backslashes, as I can see. There are a little bit too little \ns in some cases. But other than that, this looks like some code which you may be able to run eventually. So first of all, let's do that. So I'm going to fix these two small problems and also create a main function, I think, so we can just test it out. Actually, let's not create a main function, but simply include this file somewhere. I think that's easier. This is where my stuff gets kinda annoying. Let's see what all of these warnings are about. This doesn't need to be here anymore, that's true. Okay, less warnings, that's good. How does it look now? We have else ifs. These look all okay. I assume there are still some that break. Like these out colon, for example. And the way this is probably supposed to work is that everything that has a colon shouldn't have a colon in the file, I think. With that, let's try to run it. So I'm just going to copy it, I guess, for now. And let's how to do this. Okay, let's run it here and to put it into a file. So what did I do? HSC pass CLI hsc.cli. CLI.c, and then we include CLI.c somewhere in the CLI thing. We should have every type that we need in here and all the functions. Okay, errors. Option strings. It's still printing option strings. Argument we don't have, so we essentially don't iterate the arguments right now. That is true. Argument index we don't have. C string to string. And with that C string length, we can just do strlen for that. That was one of them, and then I wanted to use this one instead of the C string to string. And we kind of need the same loop we have in main. I forgot to put string around the arguments. What is the problem? For W no. It told the CLI option that it's an integer? All of them are integers. How come? Because I use options instead of option. B32 success. String to use 64, only thing missing. And with that, it compiles. So we can try it out, I guess. Sure. If we are testing, we should probably return after this. We don't have a default case in the end, but maybe everyone's fine for now. So W, no, W, you can see it does nothing. It's kind of what we expect to happen, isn't it? But yeah, this is working fine now, and I think this is sort of where I leave the rest for my future self for now and do something else. So I hope you enjoyed it. This is the start of getting a very good argument interface, and maybe see you in the next one.